How often is it we get to a point in our lives where a big change happens? You know, like starting at a big new job or school, or maybe starting a family. Maybe even your entire world gets deleted and your memories start fading. Or something like that. And how often is it we take the time to reflect on everything that came before, just before we keep on pushing forward? Before we move on to that next big step and maybe even just forget about it all for a while. Or maybe just forget altogether. Without remembering all the truly good we had, even those unappreciated moments that may have carried us through the struggles we endured, you almost fade away into another person. Like you're forgotten. Even to yourself. Is there something I'm forgetting? Last time on the channel we left the world of Splatoon on the decaying corpse of the Wii U, a system that ultimately died a pretty miserable death. As for the series after July of 2016, Splatoon held its last Splatfest event, and then we were left with nothing. As early as October 2015, a rumoured new Nintendo console under the codename NX had everyone in the community whispering for nearly a year, as fans hoped and critics were intrigued towards a new, exciting console that could take the world by storm. Rumours populated the gaming landscape for what felt like years, as the Wii U was dried up for compelling titles and support approaching the NX unveiling on October 21st, 2016. And that was when we got the reveal, dropped on Nintendo's YouTube channel, the first look at Nintendo Switch. And on the side of all the hype, we got a teensy look into the next step of Splatoon. Was it a port? Was it a new game? The Switch has since seen a huge success, selling over 100 million units 5 years after its release in March 2017. And Splatoon 2 would follow suit in July 2017, seeing its own great success on a far healthier platform, and quickly seeing another sequel launch on the same platform. After the Switch was announced, we eagerly awaited its next showing in January 2017, where we got a presentation showing off a promising future, exciting hardware, and a whole new lineup of games to kickstart its launch year, including what was revealed to be Splatoon 2, a full sequel to Splatoon. In said Nintendo Switch presentation, we saw the unveiling of a new weapon class, the Splat Dualies, and their unique ability to dodge roll while firing. In the trailer, we also got a brief showcase of a bunch of new specials, not a bad idea as the old ones were completely incontestable. Some were fun, but they were also unbalanced as hell. We saw a brief showcase of the new maps and a returning map with Moray Towers, slightly reworked with the integration of previously single-player hero mode exclusive assets, such as the inclines to swim all across the map with. The single-player trailer for the game came at the end of the ARMS Direct and showcased a more cinematic focus in comparison to the goofier lightheartedness the original seemed to have. We see Marie staring off into the sunset in a new outfit, a lot more reflective and dramatic than we'd seen before. The intrigue was definitely building. It felt like this game had the potential to rise above the first, and now 5 years after its launch, after the 2 years of consistent and large-scale DLC support with new updates, Splatoon 2 has had time to sit comfortably for a while now. So at the end of it all, it's time to discuss the legacy of Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 starts you off in the same kind of tutorial as Splatoon 1, showing you the basics of the game. We have the same controls, same mechanic of painting the ground with ink and swimming in it, same idea of sub-weapons as bombs, swimming up walls, the whole lot. But have you noticed it just looks a little bit nicer, smoother even? It's got a nice shine to it, and the paint spread is just so much thicker. Each time the ink touches the ground, it feels like it just spreads like butter, where Splatoon 1 could be so much spottier, especially on edges of textures and different kinds of platforms. We've got more customization of the Inklings booting the game up, new hairstyles and better overall animation. This game's polish in its presentation and gameplay overall feels like if Splatoon 1 had far more time in the oven with 4 times the budget. It's so weird looking back at this tutorial now. I just remember at the time this tutorial medley song gearing me up, ready to go, shredding through these boxes. I was ready to just jump straight into this new game. Now the music of any game is super important, and I love video game soundtracks a lot. When a soundtrack scores the scene just right, it entrances you in that mood like nothing else could. It's like the icing to a cake. The icing isn't the base of the cake, but it makes the cake. A good jam with perfectly intertwined gameplay makes me never want to put a game down. Now, I'm no musician, as I've said before, and music is completely subjective, but I feel as though the music in this game is far less coherent to a specific theme than the first, and not as good, quite frankly. I appreciate the insane diversity in this game's soundtrack, but it also means if you like one style of the music, the rest is so different, I can almost guarantee there's something that will just annoy your ears. To me, Splatoon music has got to have some good hard rock or a fast pace. That's how the first game was, and props to this game for trying something new. Splatoon 2 followed Splatoon 1 in releasing ongoing content updates, but Splatoon 2 kept at it for a lot longer and released more major updates with 2, 3, 4, and 5.0, alongside all of which came new sets of music for online battles. Splatoon 2 1.0 music for online battles at launch, all of it by the fictional Wet Floor band, has a techno aesthetic to it, a lot of synth usage and a lot of bass. These ones are pretty good. They can be a bit slow at times and they don't really elevate themselves to anything super hyper or intense, but it fits the new game setting quite nicely. But for the 2.0 music, what the hell happened here? This music here is a lot more experimental, using trumpets and like rubber duckies. The bottom feeder's band is just whack. It's super weird and it just doesn't sound like Splatoon. And Shipwreckin is just terrible. What in the sea shanty is this? This one song Broken Coral by Ink Theory sounds pretty cool, but I feel like that's the only one. Splatoon 2 3.0 music slaps. It brings back the chiptune focused band from Splatoon 1, Chirpy Chips, with some of their best music yet. But 4.0 music is, again, quite experimental, but arguably makes some fairly okay music this time in comparison to 2.0. I don't really know if it fits the theme either though. The lore behind these is that the band remixed ancient human vocals they'd found. Interesting concept, some people like it, not exactly my thing. Now moving on from the music to the actual hub, we've got a similar layout to last time. Decker Tower is the entry point for online battles, the Galleria for gear and weapons, with all new shop owners except for Sheldon. Next is a dodgy looking shop, and then the Shoal for local multiplayer, which I'm not going to go into too much this time, but basically it lets you play with separate switches only this time, but without a Wi-Fi connection in either private battles or Salmon Run being the new Horde style mode of Splatoon 2. Then we've got a strange figure over a sewer drain, and another dodgy back alley. Before all that, we're shown off the hook, Pearl and Marina, the new pop star idols who run the local news show with the stage rotations, this time only playing once when you boot up the game or when the new Salmon Run mode opens again. I don't know why Inkopolis has a tradition of pop stars in charge of the news. Noticeably, however, Marina is an Octoling, the enemy species of the Splatoon 1 hero mode. The stage rotation now consists of 3 separate queues that change their maps and modes for the ranked and league queues every 2 hours now instead of 4, which is a much appreciated improvement. I still hate spamming through this shit when I turn on the game though, because it's so much longer now. This first news report also reveals once again that the Great Zapfish has been taken. This certainly isn't going to get repetitive, but it also reveals the disappearance of Callie of the Squid Sisters. That pretty much sums up the new world we're in Inkopolis Square. It isn't the most drastic of a change, to be honest. We've had like a 2-year time jump from the events of Splatoon 1, and we're now like a few blocks away from the old Inkopolis Plaza. So to get into the modes again, we have all the returning modes from Splatoon 1, all actually at launch this time. Of course we have the main mode, Turf War, which hasn't changed a single bit, but why would you change it? It's the core idea behind Splatoon in the first place. It uses the whole map as the battlefield, and constantly at that. And of course it's never going to be competitively viable, because you will just lose in the last 30 seconds if you lose one fight, despite ruling the map the whole match. Oh, and the end of the battle also now has 2 cats. Then there's the returning ranked modes, all with quite minimal changes. Beforehand, however, Splatoon 2 gave the ranked system a pretty big rework, now requiring you to fill a bar as you win games, or if you lose too many, your bar will crack and break. If your progress is below the yellow line when it does break, you will rank down, whereas otherwise you'll just lose a lot of progress. This is kinda cool, because if you can fill the whole thing quickly with only a few losses, you can rank up without losing any progress, and the losses won't be taken into account as they're outliers. 2018 also saw the introduction of X rank, a new highest rank that needed you to reach S plus 10, meaning you needed to fill 10 individual S plus bars to get there. X rank determines matchmaking among the most skilled players with 10 placement games and then a power level, the higher end usually falling somewhere between the 2700 to 3000 range. I usually fell somewhere around the 2000 to 2300 range. Splatoon 2 in general only gets 8 maps per mode per month, which sucks in my opinion. We're already locked to 2 maps every 2 hours. I think as much variety as possible is only a good thing, it's more fun. I'm a strange breed of online player, huh? Highest rank but wants fun as well. We also have 1 rank per mode now as opposed to 1 rank for the entire game, which was an interesting change. It just sort of meant it was a lot more work to get everything to X rank. I don't really understand the change or what it does, maybe because they added Clan Blitz, a new very complicated mode they thought skill wouldn't necessarily translate over as easily from other ranks. Seems like a bit of a stretch though. All this change really did was make it harder to get to X on everything, making you have to complete basically 40 S plus meters total to get everything to X. And now first for the ranked mode changes, there's Splat Zones, which is the exact same, although maps have been reworked like the returning maps of Splatoon 1, to where maps with 2 Splat Zones have their zones much closer together this time rather than a gazillion miles apart. There's also a little UI indicator at the top to reflect the ratio of team colors on the Splat Zone. Then there's Tower Control, which added a more significant change with checkpoints so that matches could last longer. Along the set path the tower moves along, teams will have to click checkpoints by sitting still at them with the tower, making them a much easier target to eliminate as they're stationary while clearing a checkpoint. Unlike Splatoon 1, the tower does not move faster at all times with more inklings on it. It only does this when clearing a checkpoint. Once a checkpoint is cleared, if you return to that same point after having the tower backtrack a little, you'll be able to move along through with no checkpoint to stop at this time. An extra other thing is that the team who is currently controlling the tower, as indicated by the meter at the top, will have increased special gauge filling speed too, and that's it for the changes of tower control. Onto Rainmaker, the mode itself has seen no changes, but the way the actual weapon you hold has. Upon charge, now an indicator will reveal itself to show where your aim will direct the weapon fire like a bomb would. Upon releasing fire on a full charge, a spherical shot will land and detonate in an explosion after a short delay. I think this approach to reworking the Rainmaker is still fairly powerful, easy to maneuver, and easier to fight against as it isn't just hurling these massive tornadoes through walls of enemies, instead giving them time to react. Now Splatoon 2 didn't introduce any new ranked modes at the launch itself, but shortly after the major 2.0 content update, we got the unveiling of Clam Blitz, a new ranked mode to join the rotation. Clam Blitz is a pretty damn complicated new mode and often confuses new players. So okay, this is how Clam Blitz works. Collecting clams is part of the main objective of the mode, which start the match scattered individually all over the floor visible on the map. Later on, as clams are collected, used and lost, more will spawn in certain spots on the map in groups of 4 to collect. Each player holds their own clams, where it shows your team's current held total of clams all between you at the top of the screen. Once someone is able to hold 10 clams at once, those clams will form a power clam, which is a large football with clams stuffed in it. This is used and is the only way to open the enemy team's clam basket, where once it's opened, you try to throw in as many clams as you can into the basket using the A button. You can throw either individual clams worth 3 points each, or a power clam for 20 points all at once. The basket is open for a certain period of time until you stop throwing clams into it, and then it will close again with a point penalty against the team who was just attacking it. If you score 100 points into the basket, you win, or if you've scored the most points at the end of the 5-minute match, you also win. I think overall I do like Clam Blitz when it's fun, but when you're absolutely just failing to coordinate your team on any level in this insane mode, it becomes so annoying just screaming at your TV for someone to throw you the last clams you need for a power clam. And that sucks because this mode on certain maps is able to utilize the entire map, and maybe here, just maybe, the lack of communication tools is to blame. There's a lot of team coordination required for it, and unfortunately, as I forgot to mention in the last video, Splatoon has absolutely no tools at your disposal. We have this way and booyah by pressing up and down on the D-pad respectively. That's it. Voice chat may not be necessary, but some form of advanced communication when dealing with these players would be nice, like my special is ready, or I'm gonna flank them, or something would go miles in higher levels of solo ranked queue. Nintendo does offer voice chat through a mobile app that no one can be bothered using and can only voice chat with people on your friends list. So it's pretty much useless because I can just use outside software to do that instead. As for friend joining options in general, I had a lot to say about it last time. And it still sucks! League Battle is there for ranked battles with friends, no tri-squad anymore, just duo and quad squad. Cool, whatever, fine. Even an exclusive rotation for League Battles separate to the solo ranked rotation. Awesome. Why is there still no party system for Turf War? What is this? The new Salmon Run mode has a party option with the ability to fill the rest of their crew. Splatfest, which had a stupid friend support system earlier in the game's life, later got updated to include the same party system where you can recruit strangers after you get all your friends in. While we're on the complaint train, we may as well mention a few other things like the removal of the arcade games. So now in the lobby, you kind of just sit there and do nothing, and it sucks, and I don't know why they removed it. You can like use the sticks to change like the song pitch and speed. Who asked? And there's the lack of the room codes in private battles and kicking abilities in private battles. Oh, and still, when you join the lobby, you cannot just leave out of the lobby. You have to commit to whatever weapon you may have accidentally picked, or join the wrong friend, or just done something stupid entirely. You can't just leave, no. I would just have to close the game completely. They did at least fix the not being able to change weapons between matches. That's something really good. thank you. And the game also does run a super smooth 60 FPS, no more hard frame drops and lag like Splatoon 1. But the game also has 100 milliseconds of input delay, which if you didn't know is pretty damn terrible. It's worse than even Splatoon 1. Now Nintendo, please stop being a bunch of cheeky little goofballs and make your online game be good with basic fundamentals. So after all that yelling and crying, we have something that is so much fun with friends, Splatoon 2's Salmon Run. Upon entering this strange building, you take the role of a newly recruited worker under Grizzco Industries, taking orders from Mr. Grizz, who solely communicates through a stone statue to collect power eggs like from Splatoon's Hero Mode and golden eggs. You know nothing else about him. You launch into a damp, isolated and abandoned new location on one of 5 maps and are introduced to the Salmonids, a species defending their lands and raiding the surface by attacking the Inklings here to harvest their eggs. You take on 3 waves of Salmonid armies where you have a quota of golden eggs to reach as a team of 4 allies, obtained by killing the Salmonid boss enemies. We've got so many types to defeat, with quite a few taking abilities from the main game's special weapons. To speedrun them quickly, the Stinger is a Salmonid atop a collection of pots and pans who will use the Stingray special, lasering you across the map targeting the player furthest away from it. The Scrapper drives a little car where you're supposed to blow his vehicle up and then shoot at his weak spot from the back. There's the Flyfish, who is a piece of sending out missiles from the sky, and you have to throw 2 whole bombs into his launchers to send him down. Steel Eels have these giant worms that try to coil around you and chase after you, where you gotta take out the pilot at the back. Steelheads drop a giant bomb from its head, where you have to pop it before it drops it. There's the Drizzler, who shoots out a little torpedo that will burst and send out an ink storm rain cloud. You can either take him out gradually when he reveals himself, or one-shot him by aiming his torpedo straight back at him before it explodes. Then for the last of the regular bosses, we have Morse, who is probably my favorite. It swims under the map, gives a small window to get out of its attack area, then chomps up at you from the ground. You kill this one by quickly chucking a bomb into its mouth. Pretty simple, but I like it a lot. There's also the changing tide, of course, that can be either low, medium or high, and increase or decrease the area available to work, making it more or less intense. Then there's the events, where the sky will go dark and special conditions will alter that specific wave. There's the rush mode, where Salmonid will storm the specific player that glowflies attach themselves to, changing targets constantly, and you gotta defeat Goldies to get the golden eggs back. There's the fog mode, where there's fog now and also Goldies appear. This one can have some cool ambience. There's Goldie Seeking, where you open various lids to look for the Goldie, where the height of the open gusher reveals how close you are to finding him. Then there's the Cohawk Charge, which will put you at low tide with cannons to utilize to absolutely blast a massive wave of the biggest basic Salmonids there are. There's the Gorilla Wave, which laser onto someone and robotically and ruthlessly target that specific player, where others must attack the tentacles on its back. Then there's the Mothership, which is my personal least favorite. It's just annoying hitting these little dropping suitcases that are your means to obtaining golden eggs, and then having the Mothership try to attach itself to your egg basket and vacuum up your eggs. As for your weapons for this mode, you'll get 4 randomized weapons to choose from that are active for the whole current rotation, which lasts a long time with just one specific map and set of rewards. At launch for Salmon Run, this was super annoying because we couldn't play it nearly as much as we wanted to, but now at most there'll be like a 6-hour window between rotations, which is a lot nicer to deal with than the rotation lasts for about 2 days. Still pretty stupid though, and it should just be on all the time. Occasionally there'll be a randomized weapon thrown in there, or all 4 will be randomized, where you can even receive special super busted illegal Grizzco weapons. You might also get a rotation with 4 golden weapons, which will mean they're always going to be the Grizzco branded weapons. The rewards are really good in Salmon Run too. You get coins, coin tickets, XP tickets, ability chunks, and exclusive gear to the mode. You also have your own rank to increase the difficulty of your games as you play more. As for the maps, there's the Spawning Grounds, which is a solid enough basic map, but it doesn't have all too much height or safe areas in it, and having to traverse these grates, especially on high tide, is a nightmare. There's Marooner's Bay, definitely my favorite, up on an old abandoned ship with fans to escalate you back up from the bottom. There's Lost Outpost, a map that's not too bad with like a little box that you kind of sit in, but once all the bosses are in that box, it's super cramped and chaotically frustrating to deal with them. Salmonid Smokeyard is a map I do not like very much, and it has 2 islands that you gotta take fan platforms across, which means that you have like half the space as normal, where you gotta use one specific exit if you want more room. It's just not good. Then there's Ruins of Arc Polaris, which is a very interesting map. I actually really like this map for its unique idea. It's a huge spiraling tower and has Salmonids climbing up to get you with grind rails all over it, which is awesome. And then there's the mystery just behind this level in general. There's a crashed rocket ship sunk in the water, English text all over the place, and a warning for a bear with bear tracks down at low tide. This map is very interesting lore-wise. And that's it for Salmon Run. It's such a unique and well fleshed out offering for this game, and it's so fun when you hit just just the right difficulty, especially coordinating with friends. It's such a welcome, entirely new style of gameplay. Now from the salmon species, we move to the octopus in the hero mode of Splatoon 2, exploring the disappearance of the great zapfish again, and being recruited by Marie of the Squid Sisters, or Agent 2 from the last game, but now using a new Inkling under the alias of Agent 4, as opposed to Agent 3 of last time. It's honestly a pretty big letdown in terms of story. It's the same plot as before, just with Marie also looking for Callie, investigating her disappearance, where almost nothing happens story-wise between the start and the end. The gameplay is a good amount better though, with a selection of 9 different hero weapons to unlock as you progress that you're forced to use on specific levels, actually designed around all of them, which is really cool. To upgrade all your different kinds of weapons, you've got the collectibles for the game, the Sardinium, a new collectible in each level, and the Sunken Scrolls that return from before that offer lore inside. Certain amounts of both Sardinium and Power Eggs are needed to upgrade your weapons, ink tank and sub-weapons, where here we've now got the new Auto Bomb and Curling Bomb to replace the Burst Bomb and Seeker from the last game's hero mode. As for the Sunken Scrolls, they offer a little bit of insight into various parts of the lore, but even they're more disappointing this time around, focusing on the little stuff that's changed between games for people who really care, but I don't really care all that much that Sheldon's weapons shop has moved. Like, yeah, I can definitely tell it is here now. There are some cool ones like the first two, touching on Pearl's supersonic voice ability and the liberating effects of the Squid Sisters' Calamari Inkantation performance to defeat DJ Octavio at the end of the last game, with a little look into Marina and how it affected her in the illustration. There isn't too much to say about the hero mode. They might have gotten a bit better at designing the levels, but they're pretty samey for the most part, which isn't all that impressive because it doesn't hit you with the wackiness like it did the first time, because it's just the same kind of thing that's been recycled. It has some pretty cool bosses once again, the Octo Oven shooting out toast platforms to climb, the Octo Samurai being a pretty cool one where it's an actual organic entity with a roller he uses like a sword, the return of the Octo Stamp, the first boss of Splatoon 1's hero mode but with a jacket. This one's kinda lame. And then there's the Octo Shower, which is kinda cool I guess. Not the best, but fairly creative, where you try to snipe his little carriers to open his weak point while dodging his fairly rough attacks behind and around blocks of cover. Then we approach the final boss, and wow, this final world of Octo Canyon is something else. Here we've got Cephalon HQ, where it's a bit of a mission to find all the hidden levels here, but I frankly love it. It's pretty fun figuring out how to get to them all and traversing them here. It builds anticipation to the end. The Sunken Scrolls to collect in this area detail troubling thoughts and speculation towards Callie's disappearance as she enters into Octo Canyon and tries to spruce up the decoration around there, being the last known documentation of hers found before the final boss of the game. Here we enter into the boss kettle and enter a giant arena to face DJ Octavio. Again. Plus Callie, who would have thought? Although it is pretty cool, not too much at all beyond the surface level. Oh, she got brainwashed from the hypno glasses and this is a new Callie. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. The theatrics in this boss are pretty great, surrounded by a huge arena of Octarians. The fight acts pretty similarly to last time, but unfortunately it purely takes place in a circular arena and that is it. It does not move at all, no cool environment to traverse, no specials to help move through the changing environment. Just a couple of sets of hitting Octavia's fists back at him. We have an awesome remix of Callie's own Bomb Rush Blush, her solo song from the last game that was exclusive to her amiibo, and some new attacks of Octavio's to charge us with. We get Marie riding in with Sheldon to compete with Callie in the vocals just to score the intensity, I suppose hoping to overpower her, creating a merger between both of their solo songs back and forth, and then Marie snipes Callie's Hypno Shades. We get the both of them to unite for another rendition of Calamari Inkantation, as Sheldon gives you a modern Rainmaker to slam onto Octavio's stupid face as you spin around in a circle dodging him. Honestly, it's sadly disappointing. It's all kind of just spectacle rather than interweaving that organically into the gameplay itself, as the campaign as a whole seems to promise a whole lot more in potential than it actually ends up delivering. The levels can be a bit more extensive and creative at times than last time, and the bosses aren't too bad. At the end of the day, it's a mode intended to teach new players the basics of Splatoon. I just wish it didn't have to do that in almost the exact same way as Splatoon 1's hero mode. But players looking for something a bit more intensive in both the plot and gameplay department wouldn't have to wait all too long for a surprise later down the line. But before we get to that, we have the weapons to cover once again. This time around we didn't get all the main weapons to return initially, but we did eventually get them all over the next few months of free DLC to keep players around, but it felt a bit more artificial than last time, like they were definitely holding off porting all these weapons over so they could try and increase the game's lifespan. Regardless, we did get them all with different kits than the first game for the most part. We have a change to the roller class I was pretty excited for, the addition of the vertical flick instead of purely being horizontal, but that of course meant instead of the vertical flick doing more than the original horizontal flick could, they nerfed the horizontal flick's damage and range pretty damn hard, and now relies on the vertical flick entirely for that same range. Pretty sad nerf because something especially like the carbon roller needs to be practically in your face. I feel they could have toned down the nerf just a little bit. Then there's the charges, which now have the ability to hold the charge and bring it through the ink for a point in time. Unfortunately, scope charges lack the ability to do this, so you either pick a scope ability or the charge hold ability. For most charges, other than the newly introduced Goo Tuber, you must store a full charge only, and it lasts only for a short period of time. I was a pretty big fan of this change as it adds some mobility to the class while still being a one-shot heavy hitter. It is so satisfying flipping out of the ink and just obliterating someone. That's it really for the returning weapon classes. No other significant changes were made to any of the others' playstyles other than the addition of a few new main weapons for each class, this time a lot of them being focused around filling some kind of really small niche opening in the weapon class, such as more or less range than we'd seen before, or a weird hybrid blend of both, such as the Flingser roller with its long, slow vertical flick that can't kill for shit, and short range horizontal flick, or the ballpoint Splatling with its short range starting fire that extends to long range after a second. Starting off our new weapon classes with Splatoon 2's flagship new weapon type, the dualies. The standard Splat dualies allow for 2 dodge rolls in rapid succession by pressing B, the jump button, while firing, then for 2 more, and then again, and etc. after a second of cooldown between them. Firing normally has you using 2 guns to aim with, whereas rolling hones your sight into one stream of ink to provide a quicker, more focused spray of ink to deal higher damage. It's a pretty interesting new idea that people had the option of using, not broken or anything, but pretty fun, with all the different variants of the dualies varying in range, but also interestingly the speed and amount of rolls you can do. The Dapple dualies are quick stealthy assassins, the dualie squelchers reworked the dual squelcher from the last game into dualies that can move around even after rolling, not even having to remain stationary. There's the high power Gluga dualies that can 2-shot enemies after rolling, and the Tetra dualies with up to 4 rolls available before a cooldown. The dualies class can be an interesting new take on the shooter class to just try out. And then there's the Brella class. The Splatbrella after firing can hold up a shield in front of them that can tank damage for a while the regular fire is like a shotgun burst. If you hold a Brella for a while, you can deploy it and send it ahead, leaving a small ink path and a mobile shield you can duck around for more options or to escape tight spots. There's the Tentabrella that uses a massive shield super slowly with a powerful fire capable of one-shotting, but only with very precisely aimed hits and a very slow fire rate. You can even deploy the massively tankier shield like the regular Splatbrella to storm through enemies. It's great for defending and supporting teammates. Then there's the Undercover Brella, a weaker Brella that will always shield while firing, which can actually be nice so long as you don't throw yourself into the heat of battle or get ambushed unexpectedly from various angles. In those situations, you're pretty stuffed, but the constant shield that can't be deployed is pretty nice for outplaying a few one-on-one enemies. In my opinion, however, Brellas overall need a buff. Then there are the sub-weapons, where a lot do return from before, but there are a few removals and replacements. We lost the Seeker and Disruptor, instead getting kind of spiritual successors in the new sub-weapons. There's the Curling Bomb, which you send out that can bounce off walls and that will eventually explode. It can be held for longer and then let go to decrease its travel distance as well as increasing its explosion radius. It's a pretty cool bomb, I'd say, great for traversal. Then there's the Toxic Mist, which definitely replaces the Disruptor, changing it to an area of effect special to annoy enemies. That's pretty much it, it's way more balanced when this crap doesn't stick to you. Then there's the Auto Bomb, the enemy hunting aspect of the Seeker, almost as if the Seeker split in two, the Auto Bomb and the Curling Bomb. The Auto Bomb lands and follows after any nearby players. If it reaches them or doesn't find anyone, it blows up. Then later on in the game's life, alongside a wave of 4.0 updates, we get the Torpedo and the Fizzy Bomb, which are barely on any weapons due to them being added in January 2019. The Torpedo, when throwing in the air, locks onto nearby enemies to chase them in the air, like an aerial auto bomb, but it can be shot out of the sky. The Fizzy Bomb has you shake your Inkling back and forth to charge it up to 2 times to make it pop like a grenade in up to 3 bursts depending on its charge. These are pretty cool creative additions that feel like adding more to the core of the game rather than just bringing back and reworking old stuff. Speaking of reworks, you can now have up to 2 ink mines available at a time, but they do half the damage they did before, but they also track people. Maybe they are trying to induce players just rage quitting after getting killed by one of these? I have no idea what they were going for with this one. The tracking is kinda cool I guess. If you put these on choke points people try to get around. These main and sub weapon changes do a pretty decent job at making it feel like a new game. A lot of content, although some stuff took longer than it probably should have to be added. Overall these are good changes, and now we have some bad ones. The new special weapons of Splatoon 2. So Splatoon 1 had specials that were wacky as hell, pretty damn powerful and pretty annoying to fight, but they were really fun to use. Splatoon 2 tried to fix these problems of low skill level specials that could be popped to just rack up free kills out of nowhere, and so changed all of them. But they forgot one small thing. To make them fun. These specials ended up becoming much more spammy, way less fun to use, and insanely unbalanced. I don't know how in God's name they managed to achieve such a balance, but they both feel weak to use and are super tough to fight against. They are so annoying. Okay, so first we've got the Splashdown, a special that is super easy to charge, but is just indisputably the worst special in the game at higher levels of play. It seems really cool, and it is. When you don't die instantly when using it, you fly up and slam down to insta-splat nearby enemies, but people know exactly where to aim to kill it and cancel it super easily, so it's just a death button if you try to use it well, like at all. You basically can only use it off ledges or when super jumping in, which is honestly a pretty cool way to use it, but all they had to do was add in a bit of armor before the impact, maybe multiplying your current health by 4. So if you have low health at like 10, you'll only get to 40 health, and so you can't just use it as a panic button, win button tool. This wouldn't make it impossible to punish when used poorly, but it would help enough to make it actually usable at all. Oh god, and then there's the Stingray. The specials in this game just make me angry, man. You get infinite range with this bloody thing, just the entire map. It shoots a giant beam that will just end overtime in Rainmaker especially, instantly. Just aim it super far away at the point it tells you to and you win. Great game design. This thing also just sucks to use. It's slow and feels gross. We're not using it to absolutely abuse the objective. You can barely aim at anyone. You can see through walls, but only when not actively firing the thing. So you just waste your time just sitting there looking for people. I hate this thing. Dodging all around its massive laser from the other side of the map, it sucks. Speaking of dodging from the other side of the map, tender missiles. These little lock onto people, again, from anywhere on the map, and land all over them, shooting 4 or 5 missiles per target, but 10 for when only a single target is chosen. These can be so annoying when you're facing one user of them, but are a nightmare when facing a team just spamming them out. They're not fun to use, they're impossible to fight, and the worst feeling in the world is just being hit by missiles meant for someone else as well. They're not even that good a special, they're just so annoying. These things are so mindless. How did I play this game for so long? Okay, so for the last of the infuriating ones, this one isn't even nearly as bad. Those last few just drive me up the wall. The Booyah Bomb charges up Booyahs from yourself and teammates, which in doing so provides them with special charge for themselves too. And then it gives you a giant ball to throw that will grow and ink things. It's just annoying when this thing spams the splat zone that everyone is congested in. And why does this thing have to get 500 HP? What about the poor splashdown? Oh, and I guess there's one more with pretty bad design, the bubble blower. You send out 3 bubbles, but there's this combo you can do with a bomb to just blow it up the instant you send it out with no warning for enemies. Otherwise though, it's not really that good at all, pretty tough to get kills with. You can at least like hide yourself in the bubbles. Now the ink armor is more alright than these, but still super annoying to deal with. The user shields themselves and teammates with armor that adds a little extra HP to them. This is just annoying to fight since it makes one-shot kill moves completely invalid. It's not very interesting either, just click to have more HP. The Ink Storm is a pretty damn average special. You throw it on the ground and it sends an ink rain cloud in that general direction to do spotty inking and a decent form of pressure. Still not very fun and involved at all though. Next is the Baller, which is an actually okay one. You can roll this little hamster ball thing around and it sticks to walls with it too, able to 2-hit people by bumping them with this thing or blow it up with a powerful explosion. I don't mind this one too much, it's just again not that fun. More fun than some of the others here though. Then we have the Ink Jet, actually a well designed special here that's fun. You fly around with a jetpack with a cannon that can one-shot if it's aimed well. I like this one a fair amount, balanced as you can fight it easily, but if you're good you can also do well with it. The Ultra Stamp, which is actually added alongside the general time the Booyah Bomb was with fizzy bombs and torpedoes. This allows you to stamp around a giant painting hammer to slam enemies, and you can also throw it at the end if you feel like it. This one's a good bit of fun, though a bit weak due to the obvious weak point to shoot at its back from. Then there's the Bomb Launcher, which is just a bomb rush rework that does allow you to use bombs in it that aren't necessarily your sub-weapon for the kit you're using. If you hold down the fire button too, you can increase your range, hence the launcher part of the special's name, where if you hold down the button the whole time you will throw bombs more slowly but at a maximum range every time, and you'll start charging the next one too. It's actually a pretty cool upgrade that I like. And then that's it for the specials. I think I summed them up pretty calmly. On June 13th, 2018, Splatoon 2 launched a paid DLC campaign under the title of the Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion. A DLC promising playable Octolings and a dive into a whole new story surrounding them and a mysterious new plot. On booting it up, you create your Octoling, a different character to your Inkling, and wake up to Captain Cuttlefish from Splatoon 1's Hero Mode campaign. You both try and escape this strange underground land together, a weird subway system called the Deep Sea Metro. This intro does wonders for the intrigue of this story, far exceeding the base game Hero Mode already. We're introduced here to a talking telephone who tells us that we're test subject number 10,008 and that we must reach the promised land by collecting the 4 Thangs scattered across the subway lines. Cuttlefish shortens it to just simply Agent 8, and we head onto the train and start some missions. The levels are similar in nature to the regular hero mode, floaty stuff to jump around on, but usually with more obstacles and harder jumps, stuff like that. You'll also get a few options for when entering levels for what weapon you'd like to use, some only allowing sub-weapons, special weapons, etc., with pretty much every weapon type represented in the campaign too. You'll take on all sorts of weird challenges like completing levels with limited ink, being forced to use an unlimited special weapon, pushing an 8-ball through an obstacle course, destroying the required amount of crates, defending an objective, playing a ranked match against Octolings, and even fighting remixed bosses that are much harder than before. All these tests are done to unlock the next test and uncover different subway lines in the Deep Sea Metro, eventually coming across various Thangs that all suspiciously just look like pieces of a giant blender. The standard levels here overall offer much more of a challenge and much more variety in gameplay than we'd seen before, but still have that Mario Galaxy feel to them like before as well. The levels are also riddled with a very depressing theme of bizarreness across all of them, with these weirdly eccentric and sometimes even heavy or just outright again bizarre music across all of them, adding to the weird factor of all of it. The soundtrack follows a broken order of songs with numbers and a single word that seems to express the artist, Deadfish, as she endures the loss of free will and becoming sanitized, the weird effect that has turned all the Octolings here into mindless vessels for the greater threat at large. The songs are titled things like Shell, Progress, Ripped, Dunno, Regret, Above, Awake. Marina notes later that this effective sanitization has even left these Octarians with no pulse or signs of life whatsoever. It's supposed to be like an awakening sort of thing. Although the lore of the music doesn't really count for much to the DLC directly because it's not expressly stated in the campaign itself, my point is that the music is so mysterious and cool, with thought put into every aspect of this campaign in general. We have other deep sea denizens aboard the train with us, such as ISO Padre. He's kinda cool, I guess. He doesn't really do much. He supposedly once had a different name but can't remember it anymore after being underground for so long. We've also got other weird creatures on the line of each subway, all based on actual deep sea creatures in the real world. And of course we also have Pearl and Marina from Off the Hook communicating with us from the surface, trying to help us this whole time. We progressively unlock chat rooms to slowly learn more about them. Marina was an advanced Octarian engineer under a oppressive society who was just enlightened upon hearing Calamari Inkantation, which, I don't know, it sounds kind of goofy when you first think about it, but maybe the song was so enlightening or has some kind of lyrics to the Inklings that we can't understand in their Inkling language that just inspires them to be free from the oppression of DJ Octavio. The song did send DJ Octavio into like an uncontrollable rave, and in Tonkin Scroll 2, this is where we see Marina affected by the song in the first place. I really don't know if this thing is supposed to be hypnotic, or maybe it's just something about the melody that is like universally uplifting. We see the friendship between Pearl and Marina, Pearl being a rich lonely girl with dreams for music who befriended Marina and showed her the ways of Inkling culture. We see early demo work of their flagship song, Ebb and Flow, and Pearl's early emo phase with her angry yelly swear word song called Fucking Dudes Be Fucking Sleepin'. As we start to approach the complete collection of the 4 Thangs, Cuttlefish speaks of Agent 3 and asks how you recall their appearance from when you, Agent 8, fought them before being lost amidst the Deep Sea Metro. Agent 3 of course being your Inkling from Splatoon 1 and the protagonist of its hero mode, so you get to make your old Inkling once again, limited customization and all. So after collecting all the 4 Thangs, the phone obviously just builds a giant blender, where 8 and Cuttlefish need to be rescued by none other than Agent 3 themselves, whereupon doing so they are knocked out. As Cuttlefish stays to tend to his protege, 8 looks for an exit from this hellhole. 8 first comes across a whole array of sanitized Octarian guards that you're needed to sneak past without a weapon of any kind, all stealth-like, in what is called the Coccyx phase, where we soon come to discover all the phases of this exit path are named in this similar fashion of bodily parts and systems. The next stage has 8 progress through another set of guards and trick them into obtaining a weapon for themselves so that they can move on to the next area. The next stage features a bunch of Octarians being sanitized in this strange ooze, showing the part of the process of how they are controlled. The next has a bunch of lasers to duck and weave all around, Mission Impossible style. After that, we switch the off the hook music playing as Agent 8 nears closer to the surface. We take control of the inkjet and fly around trying to connect this power to the contraption in the center. The last significant phase is you trying to defend the zapfish that powers your movement in the first place from a bunch of oncoming enemies and obstacles. And then at last you reach the spinal phase where all seems calm now. The eerie song titled Number 19 Bless scores your ascent in an elevator to the surface where at the last second the elevator stops and we see a figure standing at the top of a spire being none other than Agent 3. A song unlike any other in this campaign begins to play, a Deadfish remix of Splatoon's original main theme, Splatak, as Agent 3 reveals themselves to be partly sanitized and begins to attack. This is one of the coolest bosses ever in this game, fighting your old Inkling as they have special weapons and a new dash move at their disposal. This battle plays similarly to that of the AI controlled Octolings fought before, but a bit harder with a few phases to it until the boss is done and Agent 3 can be saved. Agent 3 uses the curling bomb rush, a bowler, and then the stingray before finally launching at you with a bunch of super jumps, taking advantage of splashdowns to kill you before they're eventually defeated. This fight is definitely really cool and very much appreciated. But we must press on as we start to finally reach the surface proper, and as we do, as Agent 8 is finally free from their life in the suppressed, dystopian Octarian society, free from the bizarre, lonely tests of the deep sea metro, Pearl and Marina finally arrive in a rescue chopper in the distance. But before they can celebrate too much, Commander Tata, who was the phone, reveals itself as the threat behind it all in a giant statue resembling a fusion of the Statue of David and the Statue of Liberty. Tata monologues its backstory being an AI construct created by a great professor 12,000 years ago, whose purpose was to pass on humanity's knowledge onto the next worthy life form. Tata grew disgusted with the Inklings and Octarians' evolution, becoming upset at the fact that they waged war over minor genetic deviations and obsessed over trivial fashion choices. And so Tata sought out to create the true ultimate life form from a supreme DNA crafted from the finest of test subjects that would emerge successful from the deep sea metro system, retroactively explaining the blender as a way to extract victorious test subjects and the advanced capabilities of those sanitized under this primordial ooze. And now it intends to destroy all of Inkopolis and bestow the extinct human race's knowledge upon what it deems to be a more deserving race. Then Commander Tata reveals a giant cannon of this stuff and first on the city of Inkopolis to begin growing its army. So the team must move quickly with Marina taking charge over a plan to destroy this thing. She analyzes the fact that it takes its energy from solar power and so she will deploy her hyper bombs akin to massive suction bombs onto the statue to stop it from charging its energy blast. Then Pearl will finish it off with a full power battle cry as was teased back in the very first sunken scroll of the hero mode. But you as Agent 8 need to set off all these hyper bombs yourself as they're deployed in 5 stages covering the statue in ink in an all-out turf war to save the world. This thing nearly fully outdoes the boss of Splatoon 1. I can't really say if it does because they're both so good, but this fight is awesome. You have to traverse this statue in just the nick of time, platforming all across it, up walls, along grind rails, connecting to grappling hooks to make sure you get all of these bombs to cover the whole thing. It's just barely enough time to cover the whole thing, but it's gonna fire anyway, so Pearl drops down off the chopper to ready her voice with a giant killer whale to destroy Commander Tata and fight back the blast from the statue. And that's it for the Octo Expansion. The ending is pretty damn amazing, and the main campaign is a decent step up from the regular hero modes prior, with all new mechanics and ideas for levels. The story, however, is kind of similar to before with nothing in the middle of the start and end, but the atmosphere is a fairly nice substitute for that, although not ideal to have nothing but chat rooms here. We have some character building for Pearl and Marina, which is kind of nice I guess, but is the only story I guess we get in the whole middle section of the campaign. But the ending is spectacular. Spectacle, suspense, so much gameplay variety, and 2 killer boss fights to close it all out. The stakes for the final battle also just felt huge, and what a creative end using turf war to end the whole thing. It's all kind of silly when you think about it too much, or just look at it at all, but such is the nature of Splatoon, and taking it for what it is, I really liked it. So now back to the online, we have a brief mention again for the gear in this game. This time around, main abilities and sub-abilities and all that remain the same. They're still randomized when you buy and unlock them, and you can still re-roll them with sea snails. But you can also gain ability chunks, mainly through Salmon Run, but you can also clean them off gear with money or through re-rolls, and with a certain amount of one type of ability chunk, you can place that ability into a sub-slot of your gear, and that is a super neat addition. Some abilities were changed, removed, ultimately fairly minute details, but we did get the notable removal of damage up, and subsequently defense up as well, and all was peaceful in the world. Until we got main power up as part of update 4.0 in 2019. We were so close. On certain weapons, this ability would provide different buffs to your main weapons. Sometimes things like accuracy or painting ability were enhanced. And on some weapons, damage increased. God damn it. We were back in the hellscape of Splatoon 1. It was less painful because now it couldn't change the amount of hits it took to kill, but if you stacked enough on the Bamboozler in particular, the super fast firing charger weapon that kills in 2 hits, it can deal up to 99.9 damage. Meaning if you have grazed the opposition's color slightly when you're hit, aka taken 0.1 damage, you will die. Cool game. I love this game so much. Speaking of really cool stuff, this is back. This thing. And if you forgot it, of course it stands for ranking all the maps and thus essentially creating a mini video inside this giant video. We have the same criteria as last time as to what makes a good map. Ideally, each map will bring something unique to the table and justify existence with a fun design, all in my personal opinion, of course. An opinion from one single guy who uses different weapons to other people, the guy who doesn't have a team and plays low X rank solo queue. My point is, at the end of the day, my own bias is going to bleed through, and ultimately it just comes down to how much I enjoy the map, mixed in with a little bit of general consensus. So to start us off is New Albacore Hotel. I avoid this map like the plague. It takes place atop a hotel roof pool with water everywhere, kinda like a wannabe Mahi Mahi resort. The stage features thin, blocky strips of land with barely any height variation once you escape the base. Mid is a huge flat plain that is ruled by long-range charges and splatlings, so you want to get out of there as soon as possible. So how do you do that besides outright retreating? You can take a leap of faith, cross f***ing Death Bridge over here made completely of grading and an open view to get killed from any direction, or up this incline that is incredibly easy to guard and is simultaneously your best option. I hate this map with every fibre of my being, and if it returns in Splatoon 3, I'm gonna uninstall the game. And we're back again with Port Mackerel returning from Splatoon 1, and it still sucks. Maybe a little less so without the killer whale to clog things up, that's Stingray's job now. But this map is just corridors galore and feeling like you're being cornered from every direction with these damn boxes everywhere. I still just do not like this map, very cramped in linear. Its gimmick is almost like a maze, so I guess it makes sense why every time I play it, all I want to do is find my damn way out. Now back to a Splatoon map I ranked in second last time, Walleye Warehouse. It is completely unchanged in this game, which is a problem because it still suffers in the same way as before. It's narrow and you can get spawn camped very hard. It's very linear. Schellendorf Institute comes in at number 20. It has a gimmick of this uninkable ceiling on top of it all, which is just an annoying gimmick because if you run across there you'll be sniped. And if you run across the top in Clam Blitz with an ink brush you're almost unstoppable, and it is so annoying. The rest of the map overall just has pretty cramped pushing options too. It's quite frustrating in general to be killed from up top when it feels like you have very limited options in a rather small blocky map with lots of drop-offs. Next up is Snapper Canal, and it could honestly be this low purely because of how ugly it is. We play under this dingy canal in the middle of nowhere. It's gross, where this whole thing is open and flat and with all these slopes and water features flowing through it. There is some good stuff like good areas to fight on the right side of the base and a sneaky route on the left side, but overall it's very open and you can get killed pretty much anytime, anywhere. It's as if 90% of the map is mid, and that's super annoying. Onto a map that actually has a pretty interesting layout, Muscleforge Fitness, with a big block in the center acting as a sort of plateau. The problem with this map, however, is that it's a sort of inverse New Albacore Hotel, as it puts long-range users at a heavy disadvantage as it's small and has so many ways to navigate the map with basically only one spot for anchors to really sit down and scope out the map. This spot is also in an incredibly vulnerable position anyway, and yet is somehow the best option you'll have. Following is Wahoo World, and this one has a little bit more to offer over the others in terms of interesting terrain, such as more curves and hilliness, but it has one of the most congested mids in the entire game as it collides in this stupid circle bit. And this is one of the most inaccessible mids ever. And maybe this wouldn't be one of the most inaccessible mids ever if it didn't have its horribly implemented gimmick of a bottom that spins around for 30 seconds, then stops for 30 seconds as a bridge extends to mid. This happens every 30 seconds for the entire match. Horrible map idea, removing parts of the stage. I'm keeping it brief with these returning maps that have barely changed, so once again Piranha Pit is low on the list because it's ugly and offers very little gameplay variety compared to any other map. You just sort of move around in this one, it's kind of flat and boring. Now we have Gobi Arena, which I don't actually mind all too much, but looking at it objectively, it feels very cramped almost everywhere you go. Narrow ledges, exits, and even a small tiny little island here that will be your key point in the map you want to hold for your team. It's got a pretty good theme, but it doesn't do anything all too special with that at all. Starfish Main Stage similarly has a pretty neat theme, being that of a concert stage you approach from both sides of it. However, it once again is small at mid and lacks any real identity besides that. It's got a raised base area, a blocky island to snipe from, and a shitty little movement option on both sides of the stage over grates and water. It surprisingly does not have much of an identity either, outside of your typical basic blocky stage. Now returning again is Camp Triggerfish. It wasn't all too bad in the first game and isn't all too bad here either, but they ruined the turf war gimmick.
The only real way to meet up with other players is for someone to cross over this netted bridge section and infiltrate the enemy base, practically next to their respawn point. And you can't access your own part right next to your base, you have to go all around to the other teams. That is until there's 1 minute remaining and the floodgates drop, lowering the inkable walls to grant access to your own side. It's fairly confusing to explain, but it's a pretty decent level idea.
Not anymore. They installed this incline here so you can just defend your base on this side straight away. The floodgates lowering changes literally nothing. Next up is Manta Maria, a map that definitely has some personality, but still a layout I'm not all too fond of, although we're in territory now where I don't really mind all too much playing on the next few maps, but they're not the most fun thing to play on purely based on the design. This map has the uniqueness of these netted platforms around the masts of the ship to walk along, and it's not as small as other more lacking maps like Gobi and Starfish, but it doesn't have too much originality to it in its blocky layout. Arowana Mall returns again from Splatoon 1, but this time, in my opinion, vastly improved. Mid has been expanded and leveled out just a bit without all these janky slopes getting in the way, and they've added more room on the left side here as well as an incline across the valley here for more mobility. Coming up next is a map I rather enjoy because it's like the gimmick of Salt Spray Rig done far better. Skipper Pavilion has a unique gimmick. I don't know if I'd say a necessarily good idea, but the way it's done here with 3 sections divided along the Y-axis rather than the X-axis is so much better for making use of the entire stage, as you can approach the mid section from any part of your base as opposed to Salt Spray being a right side peeking hellscape at mid. And it's got pretty distinct approach options that aren't too oppressive when attempting to lock down the map. Sturgeon Shipyard slots in our 9th spot with a gimmick of moving parts of the stage. It's got a fitting level layout for its theme with a raised part in the center, but again it isn't all too special either. It's got a non-frustrating level layout and theme, but not much else to say about it. A really common theme it's starting to feel like with all these maps. The reason it ends up being so high up is because the others below it are just worse. At number 8 we have Mako Mart, a map filled with a fairly solid layout for all weapon types, which is the main thing it has going for it. Rainmaker and Clam Blitz are just plain terrible on this map, but Turf War and Splat Zones are pretty great standouts here. It just frustrates me once again here that the layout doesn't just strike you with being all that interesting. There's only so much you can do, however, with placing huge slabs and cubes around the place. You're not going to be creating a masterpiece. Overall though, it's a fairly solid basic map. Now we have Splatoon 2's Urchin Underpass equivalent, the Reef, the first map shown to introduce the game. It's fairly similar to Snapper Canal, but if it had a more distinct section for its base and nicer routes to take around the whole thing that are less open from all angles. It's got a nice actually inkable bridge across a canyon in the middle and has awesome theming of a small inner city shopping district. Now here's a bit of a surprise pick considering how low I put it last time. Moray Towers coming in at 6th out of 23 instead of 12th out of 16 from last time. This map's improvements I feel are so underappreciated across the game. The addition of the inclines here is almost game changing in giving vertical movement options other than a steep ramp directly towards a sniper's line of sight. The problems from last time are mitigated drastically due to not only this, but a far more open mid as well. So for me, the immense frustration I had from this map last time has been replaced in its fulfillment of its real potential of an acrobatic, hugely vertical kind of playground. Coming in at number 5 is Inkblot Art Academy, and no, this map isn't perfect, but let's address what I like about it first. This theming is excellent and it has such an amazing design in terms of its stage elements instead of just putting these uninteresting, stupid blocks everywhere. There's this shell sort of clam sculpture you can use as a platform to jump across, and we've got the centerpiece that's a lot of fun to just muck around on as well. The bad part is that it can feel rather small as well. These Splatoon 2 original maps really do have very limited spacing options and usually result in a lot more fighting than the Splatoon 1 maps. Up high once again is Kelp Dome, which is even a surprise to me, but I really like this idea of the graded platforms. It's fairly solid in modes like Rainmaker and Turf War because you've got multiple pretty different approach options. It's nothing too special to be placed up this high other than my personal bias at this point, but in my opinion it's not a bad map either. It's very creative with its idea compared to other maps here and has something unique going for it that I can more easily latch onto. In at number 3 is Humpback Pump Track, and again this high for me because I have something unique in this level design to latch onto and it isn't overly annoying in any way. Multiple approach options all around the side with the bike track circling the whole thing, a nice moat surrounding the curvy terrain in the center, and decent enough long range spots to peek into mid with both flank and escape options to them as well. It's like a whole new fresh take on Black Valley Skate Park. Speaking of, In number 2 we have Blackbelly Skate Park, where I find it to be a lot less janky with its slope physics, so overall the map is far easier to navigate. It's become a great map with Splatoon 2's renovation that vastly increased the size of the spawn area so you can defend it far easier, as the other team can't get right up to your spawn to annoy you in your face either. It's got great areas to access mid, the half pipe section and the straight ahead option, and hence in Clan Blitz can also be a lot of fun too. It's just a solid map from the first game that is improved by the polish of Splatoon 2, enough so for me in the context of Splatoon 2's meta to place it high on my list here. And in number 1 we have Anchovy Games, which returns from Splatoon 1 with almost no notable changes to affect how the map really plays. It still has its awesome fan gimmick to navigate all around the place, and an actual stage gimmick you can control yourself instead of the map doing it for you, wahoo world. I love how dynamic the map can be because of it. It's so much fun to play on this one, and will always stay a personal favourite of mine because of it. The mid can be a little compact when the platforms get raised and you're stuck down below, but you can still climb them, although I still sympathise with the argument. I just think overall it has a good layout with nothing all too annoying and plenty of valid attacking options. And that again wraps up another extremely iconic Ratmate Cambridge section. The maps of Splatoon 2 in my opinion have a very strange design philosophy that focuses a lot more on forcing fights with their layouts, with less areas to duck in and pushing everyone to a centralized point. They're quite blocky overall too, and lack a lot of identity in their stage design, and the ones that do try something sort of fail pretty tremendously, such as Wahoo World and Schellendorf Institute. It's pretty unfortunate. I just feel like Splatoon 1 maps had a lot more diversity between them all, like you could understand why people would like maps you might rank lower, but not Splatoon 2's maps since there's far more basic maps. It was just strange that so many of Splatoon 1's really great and unique stages didn't even make a return here. I wonder if that really does say something about the change in design philosophy, and in my opinion, a change for the worse. Could you imagine if they incorporated some of the sick elements of the hero mode into these maps? They got the inclines in there and sponges kind of, although they're kind of slow and weird to use, but imagine ink rails or gushers or bounce pads. Well, once a month, Splatfest will roll around again for Splatoon 2, with each and every one creating a new Shifty Station design, Shifty Station being a map purely exclusive to Splatfest. Splatfests were vastly improved in Splatoon 2, lasting about 2 years after the game came out, with Splatoon 2's Final Fest in July 2019 to conclude them. We also got some extra bonus ones after that to hold us over till the Splatoon 3 announcement. Splatfests were pretty much the same idea as Splatoon 1, 2 teams compete on a theme to decide which choice is the better one, but this time round a lot of improvements were made. Little stuff like more music to add to it, to big stuff like an actual map rotation with 2 of the 3 available maps changing every 2 hours instead of Splatoon 1's system with 3 maps only for the entire Splatfest. And of course the third map was a rendition of Shifty Station, which were filled with all sorts of crazy ideas, with a new one to replace the last every Splatfest. Moving platforms, barriers that would lock in on certain sections of the map after a while, bounce pads, dash panels, cannons, ink rails, these maps were awesome. I loved them, some were better than others, but a huge treat every Splatfest was seeing what kind of crazy map they'd cooked up this time. The Splatfest system received further overhauls with the addition of friends to join a team of whatever amount of players were desired, where before you could only do full teams of 4, and with 0 friends in Splatoon 1. This overhaul also introduced 10x and 100x battles, which would multiply your clout earned after a match by 10 or 100 respectively, so winning these things was awesome. Although 10x battles were rare and 100x battles only took place one time every 10 minutes across all players, but this would eventually be lowered to every 5 minutes and then much more frequently for the Final Fest. These were super exciting and made the Splatfest overall just hype as hell. Speaking of the Final Fest, this thing was awesome. The theme was Chaos vs Order and was subtitled as the Splatocalypse. No one knew why, but Team Chaos winning kinda ended up loosely directing the theme of Splatoon 3. This Splatfest had every past Shifty Station rotating around for the whole first 2 days of the Splatfest, where of course this was a global Splatfest as well. It had all this extra music playing too, including the Splatoon 1 Splatfest theme, which I was so excited to hear, but since they stopped playing it after day 1, I didn't get to hear it because I had some random English assignment due over the weekend that I smashed out on day 1. I should have just not done it, I can't even remember what it was anymore. Day 2 had Spicy Calamari Inkantation playing, with our Now or Never merging both the Squid Sisters and Off the Hook. The hype for this for Splatoon fans was off the charts. Day 3 arrived and had the score of the Octo Expansion final boss, Fly Octo Fly, leading into Ebb and Flow playing across the games as well. Then for all of day 3 we finished with this fest's original new Shifty Station, MC Princess Diaries, but it didn't look like it took place in the usual space environment. Instead you play on this sick level that looks like it could be a weird kind of normal stage that takes place in the sea near the destroyed statue from the Octo Expansion. The map featured this sick half-pipe section and a vast open mid with platforms and cover on the sides and middle, where Marina would also drop giant hyper bombs. These could be detonated by either teams scattered across the map at certain points in the match. Then with 1 minute remaining, Pearl would drop to the center with a giant killer whale, the Princess Cannon, where one player could grab the thing and blast it across the stage, usually straight ahead to detonate a bunch of hyper bombs all at once. To not end up dwelling on forever, this was an amazing end to Splatoon 2. Despite the Final Fest occurring over 3 years ago now, Splatoon 3 coming out has meant that, as is tradition with online games, Splatoon 2's era is over. The player base, for the most part, has moved on to the next entry, and Splatoon 3 serves to be the series' future, with all the new stories and updates to be added there. It's kind of bittersweet in the end, because for those who this game meant something to, and just like for any other online game, or any game in general really, we get to look back at it and celebrate and cherish these memories forever. The things we were going through at the time, the things we did, the things that changed, the people we played the game with and that we might not anymore, the people we met and the community we built. We get to hold on to the memory of that if we want to, and I think after looking back at the game, although a mixed bag at times, I know I definitely want to. The Splatoon series, for all its run, has been a game that I've come home to from school or my jobs or maybe just a bad day, and it just helped me wind down. I think a lot of us who love games have that kind of happy place game, or maybe even a few games that change over time, and that we might even associate a specific time with. I finished high school at the end of last year, and with Splatoon 3 out now, it's like I'm entering into a new era alongside it, to come home to or wind down with after a long day once again. But it won't be Splatoon 2. We'll make all our new memories and fun times with this game, meet all new people and build and immerse ourselves into a new community, but it won't be Splatoon 2. Nothing will. And I think it's nice to be able to appreciate that this was the Splatoon game of the last 5 years. My time with Splatoon 2 wasn't as simple as Splatoon 1. I had a lot more going on, good and bad. It isn't just pure nostalgia I feel with this one, because it was pure fun as a kid playing with my friends and making silly videos like Splatoon 1. As I said, I finished high school during the latter end of Splatoon 2's life. I grew up to an adult, I guess. But as for this channel, it's been in a rocky transition period for quite some time, trying to find its footing. But I think finally, as I kind of enter into a new world where I have the opportunities to do whatever I can in the world now, it's a new era for the channel as well. But I had a lot of fun figuring out who and what I was going to be with this channel. I went from gameplay to scripting out reviews to using it all to tell a story about figuring all that out. Through all of which, discovering all kinds of new games, Splatoon stayed as my happy place, and I think safe to say, still my favourite series. Who knows if Splatoon 3 will continue that? I mean probably, but I might find something else. I might get sick of it even. My future could take me anywhere, which is why it's so important to reflect on what this was already. I don't want to be stuck looking back at the past forever, longing for a time bygone, or regretful for being a bit silly and out there with everything on my channel at times. But I also want to make sure that this is a time that's remembered here as well. I had a lot of fun with it all, even if it was silly. All of it. So I guess that's why I wanted to say goodbye to it all. To never forget the end of an era.
Lachieninja back with another video today, starting the Splatoon 2 series. So yeah, this will be the first proper Splatfest that's in the actual game and not some demo. You think we'll win?
No.
No.
Hey, so I'm guessing DJ Octavio broke free. He found me. Stop.
I can see people teleporting. What is wrong with my
I hate you.
Your first game of Splatoon is like the last possible like minute for this epic event.
Mario Party, a series famous for diving away what the fans actually enjoy. Town of Salem is a game a lot of you probably have not heard of. Super Mario Galaxy, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy,
Mario Kart Wii,
Luigi's Mansion 3,
Club Penguin Game Day.
Lachieninja was a beautiful mess of a channel, playing all kinds of games, but
bring back the old Lachieninja. Idiot, I know what a show is, it was sarcasm. I'm you. You're the idiot.
No, fooled by the cliche.
you be proud of what you've created here. All of it. The childish spirit in you that